To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Coming to you with a live look outside at the Disneyland Resort in Anaheim, California, as we gaze off to the Guardians of the Galaxy mission breakout attraction at the closed Disney California Adventure. It is Kingdom Report live time. Hello, everyone. Wade Heath you from the Warner Brothers Studios Media District in Burbank, California, where we are going to bring you a little bit of magic this quarantine weekend. Speaking of quarantine, I have a few friends with me who are locked away. Why don't we go ahead and say hello to Tyler Crouch and Katrina Manzone of AttractionFaction.net.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Happy Saturday.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, it is. And from parts unknown, as he fled the state of Florida, our Walt Disney World reporter, who I believe is in the Midwest somewhere, all locked down, Gared Hassel joins us.
How's it going, everyone? Happy Easter weekend.
It is indeed. And, of course, here in the production dungeon, producer Curt.
How you doing, Wade?
Producer Curt feeling Easter fresh, as I like to say.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, what big Easter plans do you have?
We're staying home.
Oh.
Yeah, we're actually gonna cook a ham.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and any egg hunt, anything with the bunny?
Oh, no, that's been outlawed in LA County. We're not allowed to egg hunt this year.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, I can't do that.
Well, wear your mask just as the bunny will.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We start our broadcast today by sharing with you a lot of big news. We have, first and foremost, a very big story that recently broke concerning 40,000 plus cast members at the Walt Disney World Resort. One of the biggest unions for Walt Disney World finally came to an agreement with the company on a furlough plan for its members. Unfortunately, it seems that there will indeed be more furloughs to come starting April the 19th. As we have covered here many times, both Disneyland Resort and the Walt Disney World Resort have been paying many of their cast members up until a certain point. They will now be moving to furlough additional cast members from coast to coast. On top of that, some of the perks that come along with it are that it looks like medical benefits are going to continue to be paid. Seniority will be kept intact. I know that when it comes to the Disneyland Resort, a security union as well as a food and beverage union have all come to terms with being furloughed at this point. Hourly non-union cast members, definitely folks that have already been given the furlough notice as well as salaried individuals. So this just sort of rounds out the rest of it here as the Disney company continues to sort of brace for impact as this unprecedented time continues to roll on when it comes to the global pandemic. Guys, when it comes to Walt Disney World, now coming out with one of their biggest employee unions coming to terms, food and beverage at Disneyland, security at Disneyland. Sounds like more of the same week to week, but certainly something that kind of nice to hear that medical benefits will continue to be paid, seniority will be kept. They're going to do as much as they can to make this as easy as possible, just without the paycheck. What do you think about that, Tyler?
I mean, it's unfortunately what has to happen. I feel that, again, we talked about this last week a little bit too, but I feel that if they were to continue paying people all through this pandemic, there wouldn't be a whole lot to come back to. Mm-hmm. You would lose certain benefits. You would lose some of your pay possibly if, as a cast member. So unfortunately, this is kind of what has to happen so that Disney can remain in the position that they're in. it sounds like a selfish thing for them when you first think about it, but they really do have to support, 10 capable of doing that when they reopen, then it's going to affect a lot more people than just that company. So it's nice that they're keeping the medical benefits. I think that's a great thing. I've seen a lot of people, union members or team members, I should say, past the 19th, and I see a lot of people getting upset about that why can't Disney do that? But you got to remember that Disney has a lot more employees than Universal does at these when it comes to all the parks and everything. So unfortunately, it's something that has to happen.
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, it looks like everyone who has insurance is going to keep it for the duration of the furlough, up to 12 months, including all of full-time and part-time workers, which I think is fantastic to hear. It does say that Disney will be paying 100% of their insurance, so they won't owe any back payments, which I think is also a huge plus here. It's not something I think a lot of folks think about when they go into furlough, because how many people truly ever get furloughed in a situation like this? So nice to hear that. While Florida and California are continuing to brace for impact, both of these coasts are trying to make this as easy as possible on all the cast members affected. Even though it's hard to say goodbye at any point, it's hard to say, hang in there and put yourself in a holding pattern for a while. Many of these cast members, as we've talked about, they live paycheck to paycheck. They are folks that continue to just try to make ends meet anyway. So being furloughed really does mean that, they're probably just joining the unemployment line, most of them, and they're looking for their next paycheck in this regard. And I know that the company had been paying out weeks on weeks for many of their cast members across the country, and now knowing that more of these unions are joining them is a hard thing to hear. Gared, this union, the STCU union, represents the majority of cast members in Walt Disney World. This is something that, as Walt Disney World continues to sort of struggle with what are they going to do in terms of handling all these employees, they continue to push forward with the Disney College program being canceled and pushed even further out and further out. I know that we've talked about this in recent weeks, where the college program was let go, as well as professional internships, and anybody that's sort of on a temporary basis with Disney, they've sort of been let go at this point. Have you heard any rumblings about maybe a potential for college program to return down the line somewhere?
I haven't heard anything at all, unfortunately. I haven't heard a mention of the college program coming back. The only thing I have heard is that 2021 might be the year the college program comes back, hopefully. Typically, the college program will begin mid-January to mid-February. That's usually a start date for when they have the spring and spring advantage come in. For those that do not know, when you do the Disney College program, you can pick essentially a part of a trimester. You can either come in the springtime. You can do spring advantage, which is a longer period beginning in the springtime. You can do summer, or you can do fall and fall advantage, which is you would start in the fall and you would end somewhere in the next year. But I haven't heard anything at all. It's terrible, but Disney has to give their love and attention to their full-time, part-time, and seasonal cast members before they give anything to the college program, because the college program, it's studying abroad. It's not a necessary factor. Granted, they are cheap labor, but they are not needed if you want to find, like, they're not needed overall. Like, they do give a lot, but you got to give your attention to the people that have been with you for years on years on years. And when I heard that the seniority rankings at Walt Disney World and Disney are still remaining, that is huge, because I've heard so many times with cast members saying, like, I've been here 14 years, I picked my shifts first, I am a morning person, blah, blah, blah. And so it's good that they're not just saying, you're gone, when you come back, we'll figure it all out. So it's nice that they're keeping some of the hierarchy there, because I know so many cast members are very, very, I'm trying to think of the correct word. They're very passionate about their position in the company and how many years they've worked there, because for many people, they've worked at Disney since opening day at Walt Disney World, which is going on 50. And they worked in my department in entertainment, where they said, oh, I get to pick the shifts I want. I always want the breakfast shift, because then I'm in, I'm out. But going back to the original question, nothing I've heard for the college program has happening at all. I haven't even heard anything on Twitter regarding it. Like, it seems like Disney leadership, the ones that are still around, haven't even mentioned it because that is not their priority. The priority right now is handling the unions and handling the furloughs. But that's all I've heard.
Right, as the hourly non-union and salaried, as we had mentioned, were sort of excused into furlough recently and given their dates. Now each individual union is being worked with. And it sort of sounds to me like the more that I'm seeing these union deals come through, it's very similar to what everybody is receiving. It's all very similar across each front as to what cast members are receiving. We never want to see any cast members struggle or go through this, but currently the world is going through this, and definitely something that we wish everybody the best on, because we know how hard it must be. In other news, Bob Iger, CEO, former, now executive chairman of the Walt Disney Company, gave an interview this past week that is very revealing. He was asked about what the parks might look like upon return, when and if they do down the line. We know they will eventually. We just don't know when. And one of the quotes that got pulled from this is very interesting. He says, one of the things that we're discussing already is that in order to return to some semblance of normal, people will have to feel comfortable that they're safe. Some of that could come in the form ultimately of a vaccine, but in the absence of that, it could come from basically more scrutiny, more restrictions. Just as we do bag checks for everybody that goes into our parks, it could be that at some point we add a component of that takes people's temperature. For instance, we're studying very carefully what China has been trying to do in terms of their return to normalcy. As one of the things that's obvious is they've conscripted a large segment of their population to monitor others in terms of their health. You can't get on a bus or a subway or a train or enter a high-rise building there, and I'm sure this will be the case when their schools reopen without having your temperature taken. So we've asked ourselves the question, let's prepare for a world where our customers demand that we scrutinize everybody, even if it creates a little bit of hardship, like it takes a little bit longer for people to get in. Just as the case after 9/11, where people ultimately lived with the notion that in order for them to enter a building, if you're in an office building, you have to show a picture ID or get your picture taken to be screened, or in order to enter a park, you have to put your bags out there to be checked, and you go through some kind of metal detector, or certainly what's going on in airports with TSA. Katrina, are you comfortable with the idea of more scrutiny at the parks to get in if it means opening these parks up, getting your temperature taken?
I don't mind. I feel that they kind of have to, and then it's partly for like safety for them too, because if someone came in with like the virus and then it spread throughout like the whole day, I mean, that would be a catastrophe. So for me, I wouldn't mind a longer bag check. Obviously, sometimes bag check does get a little lengthy, but if it's for everybody's health and safety, I feel like everybody needs to put it past them and just do it. If they really want to go to the park.
Yeah, he did mention something here that I thought was very interesting, by the way, and that was more along the lines of, a semblance of normalcy and to make people feel comfortable. And I think it's important to really examine that because, this is the first kind of public interview that he's really given since all this went down. And something that he says there, to make people feel more comfortable, we have to realize that for a number of years after 9/11, the bag check even was really just for show. They weren't really digging. They weren't really, at Disneyland, it wasn't even by security cast members like it was out, east in Walt Disney World. And for a number of years, it was just to make people feel comfortable. It wasn't necessarily going to prevent a whole lot, just it all depended on the cast member, up until the point where metal detectors were rolled out there. And that's, we're only talking the last few years where that's become a reality. So to make people feel more comfortable, it might just technically be for show. Tyler, you wanted to weigh in?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I think that's exactly kind of the problem is that it is going to be for show, and people, I guess that will make some people feel comfortable, but it doesn't really make me feel that much more comfortable, especially knowing that you don't have to exhibit any symptoms to have this coronavirus even right now. So even if you don't even have to have a fever and you can still have it. So to me, it's really not that big of a change. What would make me feel better than taking everybody's temperature is if they actually brought in x-ray machines so that I didn't have to have random people digging into my bag every time I brought a bag in. And even if you have your gloves on, you still just dug into that person's bag in front of me and that person's bag in front of me. And that, you know what I mean? So
Sure.
You're literally touching everybody's stuff. to me, if they don't get X-ray machines after this, I don't know what they're doing. That would make me feel better than taking temperatures, honestly.
Like, do you want a machine like Universal Studios?
Yeah, like Universal Studios does, where every bag you have, you just throw it through the X-ray machine. I mean, I think that's I think that's the safest way to go at this point, personally, and not just for people who are sick, but also that's a much better way for any security people to be able to see what exactly is in everybody's bag. So, I mean, it's a win-win on that front.
And we've also learned that, just because you're displaying a fever, or perhaps not displaying a fever, doesn't mean necessarily that you aren't carrying the virus, or that you aren't, somebody that has other symptoms, just because maybe you're not displaying a fever. So just doing a temperature check doesn't even really solve the problem. So, Gared, are you comfortable with the idea of longer lines for the sake of potentially a better, more healthy environment in the parks?
Yeah, for me, whatever it takes to give people that sense of security is always better. Granted, Disney security is a false sense of security where if something were to go down, I'm not going to count on those guys and gals to watch out. Like, there's a reason why Orange County sheriffs are in every single park, because if something were to happen, whether a weapon goes off or some kind of big fight, the Disney security, like, they can pull you apart, but I'm not going to feel safe until I see like a sheriff officer coming in, like, with rifles or something like that. Like, having a temperature check, it'll do much, but it's like Tyler said, that does not mean that you're not a carrier. You can carry it and not show symptoms. But I can handle longer lines. I know many guests can't, and they complain about the lines. I honestly complain more about the lines to scan in than the lines to get through the bags, honestly. Like the touch point, those lines annoy me more than anything. But one thing relating to this I just want to bring up is, why did they have Bob Iger, who is the former CEO, go on and give this report rather than Bob Chapek, who's the current CEO? I would think that you'd want the leader to give this report. Granted, I love Bob Iger. I have his book and I adore the guy, but I'm just curious as to why they brought on Iger instead of Chapek.
I think it's something that we've touched on a few times here, and that is, where is the new CEO during this crisis, during this pandemic? It is fascinating. I know that Bob Iger is still there for a year. I understand that he stepped down right before all of this really hit the fan, but he's still out there in front of it, and he's still kind of the point person. And, to a certain degree, maybe it's just a comfort thing. Maybe it is just people already know my face, so I'm going to go out there and say it. But I think more than anything, guys, when it comes down to Bob Iger moving out into place and speaking publicly about what the future of the parks might look like, the Walt Disney Company is a huge part of corporate America and runs a lot of corporate America. So when they signal for something, corporate America reacts, corporate America pays attention. Governments pay attention. And so to be talking about this already kind of makes me think that they're trying to nudge all of this, let's return to normalcy forward. Any idea as to whether or not that might have some validity, Tyler?
I mean, like as far as like other people following suit to Disney, you mean?
Yeah. Do you think that Bob Iger is, sort of signaling to everybody else, saying, I think it's time for us to find a way back into some sense of normalcy, some sense of work, some sense of business, if we can?
I feel like his number one goal is his company. I'm not sure that he's really trying to push the envelope to other people in that regard. I mean, I could be wrong. I just think that the number one goal right now for them is to try and figure out how they're going to get people back at these parks, and getting out in front and saying things like that. They're hoping to make people feel better about keeping their vacations and going to the parks again when they reopen. So I'm not sure if he's trying to really push the envelope in that regard, but I mean, you're right in that it'll be a trickle down type of thing where it will probably push other companies to do that. I know that Universal, I brought up Universal a million times so far, but they keep on, they're watching what each other are doing, and they follow suit. So, we could possibly see more things like at Universal. I think they also need to get rid of we've talked about this before, but they need to get rid of those touch points at this point. I don't want to put my finger down on somebody else's finger anymore. So, they're going to have to do a lot of work to make people feel comfortable. And I think this is just one of the first steps in doing so.
No doubt the whole park experience is likely going to change as we know it. Other news in this week's mailbag, if you will, of all the headlines, there's a big story when it comes to a Wells Fargo analyst by the name of Stephen Cahall. He's claiming that Disney parks may take up to 2 years to return to normal attendance in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Cahall told investors that he doesn't think parks can get back to anything close to full capacity until testing or vaccines are far more ubiquitous, and zero park attendance for the later half of fiscal 2020 and only 50% of capacity in fiscal 2021. For reference, Disney's current fiscal year could end around September, October. As it stands, Wells Fargo is projecting that the current closures will last until at least then. Katrina, a lot to unpack there when it comes down to this analyst sort of making the prediction that attendance probably isn't going to rally back for potentially 2 years at this point, and then to know that Disney parks might likely remain closed until September, October. Does that surprise you?
Kinda. I really want everything to get better and back to normal as fast as possible. So for me, reading that, I kind of rolled my eyes and I was like, oh, Jesus. I just can't imagine it taking that long for the parks to reopen. But honestly, in reality, it probably could. But just like 9/11, Disneyland took a hit and a lot of people didn't show up for quite a while and then slowly started getting back to normalcy after a year. So I feel like this was even worse. I'm not gonna say it's worse, but it affected.
It will affect them more. Yeah,
it affected more people. I'm not saying 9/11 didn't affect a lot of people, but I'm saying that this everybody is in quarantine. A lot of people are furloughed, and again, it's just everybody's scared of going out because they don't want to get sick, and I clearly don't want to get sick either. And so I think that a lot of people are going to put on hold their vacations because sadly, a lot of people they're not earning enough money and saving enough money for vacations anymore. So they might have to delay it a year. So that's going to trickle down to Disney and Universal and all these other places, cruise lines and everything. So I can see it taking a couple years for it to go back to normalcy. Even if they do a vaccine, there's things that are saying that this is going to happen every season, which is kind of crazy to think about. So hopefully there is going to be a vaccine to kind of help alleviate that and help bring back normalcy. But I don't want to say they're right for 2 years, but most likely.
Yeah, I know that going into the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World, Gared, there were big plans for a lot happening going into next year for the Walt Disney World property and to really be pulling people in. And, it was expected to be probably more crowded than ever as parks really have kind of hit a swell point in recent years. And that's coast to coast, by the way. You go to Disneyland or you go to Walt Disney World, even in times that were often considered off-peak now, very, very busy. Well, COVID-19 is sort of taking care of that with the shutdown. Are you somebody that sort of subscribes to this idea that it's going to take 2 years to maybe rally back and even then probably not open until September, October?
I think 2 years is a very good timeline because you don't want to predict something that it'll only take 6 months and then it's a lot longer because that looks bad. I think the analyst was very good in the observations that it could take 2 years. I'm just thinking that if a vaccine does become available and then is able to be produced in massive quantities so that way everyone could have this, I think that will help speed up the process of bringing the parks back to some sense of normalcy. The thing I worry about is international travel because domestic travel is one thing, but when you add international where you have people come from different countries, different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, a lot more interactions, especially when you're on a tubular, when you're in a sealed container with repossessed air, that kind of doesn't really help with make things better. I think
you mean an airplane?
Yeah, I wanted to but yeah, 2 years does seem very real. I think the 50th anniversary will help a lot just because it will drive people in there. And the beauty about Disney is that people look to Disney for hope, because Disney is. I remember when the Great Recession was happening. Sorry, I'm jumping around, but the Great Recession, the economy was down in the U.S., but people still went to Disneyland and Disney World for the 50th and the Year of a Million Dreams because it was that spectacular. So 2 years, probably likely, but I think around maybe in 1 year from now, they'll start to see a little bit more because it's going to be the beginning of summer. I think people will be like, know what? It's a little bit better. It's been under control for a while. As long as there's not like a second outbreak, things should go well. But 2 years does seem realistic, unfortunately.
Yeah, a real interesting point to make is that, coming out of 9/11, while I'm not somebody that thinks that these two are at all relatable in regards to tragedy level and the type of thing that occurred, obviously. Coming out of 9/11, there was, from a travel perspective, a real slump. People weren't traveling. People weren't going to big public places out of fear. And so that took a while to really recover from. And the one thing for Disney parks that really pulled people back in was that 50th anniversary for Disneyland. And, it became the happiest homecoming on earth worldwide. And that, I think, was a real signal for the first time for the public to sort of get back to a sense of normalcy. I think it did take quite a few years for people to really get comfortable again going out into major public venues. And Disneyland, I know, was suffering with a huge attendance slump, and there was just so much that they were doing to try and entice people to come. But when there's fear, and so it took the 50th anniversary at that point to bring people out. Granted, the 50th anniversary was in 2005. I believe they started it in 2004, the Disney calendar. But I know that they started it around that time. So it took a few years to really react. We might be looking at something similar here. I'm not necessarily sure, because obviously we're dealing with a health crisis and not necessarily an act of terrorism. But we will see. 2 years seems to be a long time.
I feel like, with 9/11, I know, like you said, they're not entirely comparable, but, we had the fear in 9/11 and we have the fear now, but I feel like a major difference is we are also don't have the money anymore. 7 million people close to are going into unemployment in America now. And that's a much bigger hit to people than what, than the monetary thing that happened during 9/11. So I think that's also something else to take into account, that it's not just the fear, but also people ain't going to have the money,
Another great point. Absolutely. And I think when it comes down to it, there's a lot of concern about this. What does the park experience look like? Is it going to be limited to begin with? Are they going to reduce their own capacity? Are they going to reduce the number of people that can visit? Will that encourage people to sort of shy away and think, well, they're not even letting in a whole lot of people. Maybe I shouldn't go. Maybe I should wait this out. Gared, what do you think?
Sorry, I had myself muted. I think when the parks do reopen, they will not have the maximum capacity that they had before. Say, for example, New Year's Eve, you could roughly fit around 100,000 people. I don't know the exact number for the fire code, but you could fit around that many people. I could see them taking at least a 30 to 40% cut on top of that. So instead of there being 100,000, you'd only have 60,000 inside the park to sort of prevent people from condensing into tight, cramped spaces, which then leads to possible infection. The overall thing is people want to feel safe, and the only way they can do that is by limiting the amount of people that can come into these spaces. So the parks will be open, but they'll have very limited things, limited hours, limited maybe availability in the sense of how many people can get into the park. They will probably be like maybe at 50,000 people at Epcot, we stop letting people in just because we want everyone to have plenty of room to get around. You don't want people cramped up, because then people get nervous about other people touching them, so on and so forth. So there's definitely going to be a lot of social distancing implemented into the parks. That's what I feel.
Couldn't agree more. When it comes to Disneyland, there's a lot to talk about on that front. I know that one of the big things that the Orange County Register covered this past week is that Disneyland is planning a $200,000 renovation of Frontierland's main entrance gate. So when the park reopens after the coronavirus closure, a building permit was filed with the city of Anaheim, calls for this replacement of a pair of 15-foot tall faux wooden gates and a 16-foot long marquee, along with the widening of an existing bridge at the Frontierland entrance. This is all according to public record. It's nice to hear that we are going to be seeing a sort of widening of a pathway as well as sort of an upgrade to this entrance. Katrina, when you examine this idea of spending money on something that maybe perhaps didn't need to happen, but certainly is moving forward. When you examine that these gates are going to get an overhaul, this entrance is going to get an overhaul, is that something that makes you go, I probably would have spent $200,000 on something else, or does it make you go, oh, that'll be nice to have?
I mean, I was the second one. I was like, oh, that's kind of nice. Because, like, again, they did it recently in Adventureland. They took out a couple, made it wider so more people can come in. And I think it was in desperate need for Frontierland too. So I think it kind of needed to happen. But right now is kind of like ill timing. But I mean, I'm glad it's happening. But again, they're going to reopen the park and then they're going to start construction on it. So I mean, that's kind of crazy because now there's going to be like lower attendance. I think they're already like anticipating lower attendance. So they're just kind of like, might as well just get it done while there's not a lot of flow. So in the future, when people do come in, they can have it ready. Possibly.
Yeah, typically, the property work that is done in any capacity, whether it be purchasing property, whether it be, strategic infusions of cash for the sake of infrastructure, that stuff is usually done well in advance. So we always like to make that clear that it's not like Disney saying, hey, let's furlough, 10,000 cast members over here and then spend $200,000 on widening a gate. I don't think that we should be putting those two in the same box because those strategic decisions are made usually well in advance. And we've talked about in recent weeks some of those other property buying escapades that Walt Disney World is doing. It looks bad right now. They probably should have come out, as Tyler has mentioned, and kind of said something up front like, hey, this is something we already had in the works long ago, and is something that we're looking to do in the future, just for the sake of letting cast members know who are worried about their next paycheck that they're not turning around and spending millions of dollars on property, or in this case, $250,000 on gate widening and enhancements. So certainly something we like to make sure is well defined there. At any rate,
it was going to happen.
Say that again.
You knew it was going to happen because they did Adventureland. So obviously they had Frontierland in the works already.
It's clearly been a part of the plan because they've been doing this.
You can't get mad over it.
They've been doing it to every land. They did it at Tomorrowland and all that, so it's something that they've been planning, and now they figure it's a good time to do it. So
perhaps part of Project Stardust that had been going on, in and around the 60th anniversary of Disneyland, and coming out of that, and really the whole idea of widening walkways, making the whole environment much more guest-friendly, because as Disneyland has, sort of taken on more attendance over the years, the entire park experience has remained very quaint, very intimate, and what I mean by that is it's been cramped. As attendance goes up and up, the park itself is very tight in terms of getting around on busy days in particular, and they've added all kinds of different things over the years to try and alleviate that. So looks like just another drop in that bucket, trying to make things a little bit better on that front at Disneyland. The Jameters, have you heard of them? Well, over at Epcot and Walt Disney World, they are a group that like to come out, a group of custodial cast members, and they like to rock out on trash cans. They like to rock out with their brooms and dustpans. Well, they are also at home like many of us and dealing with the quarantine life. We wanted to share with you a video that they produced earlier this week where, they also want to still have some fun, still pump in some magic. Let's take a look at what they've got going on in quarantine.
Oh, hey everybody, this is Polly with the Jameters. Listen, the guys and I thought that since you couldn't come visit us at Epcot, we could use our voices from home to jam with you. Let me see if I can get the guys on the line. Here we go. Polly? Oh.
Hey, sounds good, guys. Everybody, clap them off, or dance along, or use voices from home to make up your own song. Check it.
See you real soon.
Where did that come from?
Mwah! Perfect.
Yeah!
Kingdom Team All Call time. It is where we take your questions and look to give you the answers that you deserve as best we can. And today, Edward Ingetti has sent to us a question asking the team, how do you think these closures will change the Disney World experience moving forward? Is it going to limit capacity? Is there going to be phased openings, virtual queues, everyone wearing masks, cast members wearing masks even? So Edward wants to know, how do we think this is going to change the Disney World experience? Tyler, let's go to you first. Anything in mind when it comes to how these parks get back open?
I can name a few things I would like for them to change. Like I was discussing earlier, the x-ray machines to check everybody's bags, and they're going to probably have to get rid of those touch points and maybe go to the photo system that Disneyland has, where when you purchase a ticket, they'll take your photo. They might have to switch to something like that. It'll slow things down, but to be healthier at this point, I mean, I don't know if they're going to have cast members wearing masks, because again, kind of like Bob Iger was talking about earlier, they want to have people have a sense of security, even if it's a false sense of security. Yeah. So if they have cast members walking around with masks on, that might make people a little uppity. I'm not really sure if they'll do that, but I definitely think for our society, we're going to see a lot more people wearing masks. Just in general for the next few years at least. And I'm hoping that we just see a lot more cleaning happening. And I'm hoping that they get, better things, just like better soap and sinks that don't turn off after 5 seconds. That's I think the minimum of what we can expect, hopefully.
And Katrina, anything you assume might change with the Disney World experience in particular, coming out of the other side of this? A lot of international visitors like to visit a place like Walt Disney World, Disneyland too, but to a much greater degree, Orlando and Walt Disney World. How do you think the experience is going to change?
I feel like, again, like they might be wearing like more gloves. Like I would honestly feel like it would be safer if they did gloves. And then for even cast members to wear gloves, I think it'd be kind of cute to make like cute white gloves with like little like dots and stuff like Mickey Mouse. So it's like, kind of fun, but it's also very like as a necessity. And then maybe they could sell them in the park. I'm sure a lot of people would like to buy those and be like a little Mickey Mouse. Anyway, side note. And I think people are going to wear a lot more masks. And then I kind of like what Tyler said. And then for the international people, I think that the ones that really want to go are going to come, and they're probably going to be very, very diligent on what they do. They probably are going to have more Purell, especially like in the European countries where like Italy, for example, they got hit hard, and they're not going to joke around about if they travel, they're going to probably really be really prepared and carry like Purell and like anything, like masks, gloves, and then just be more diligent about like not being close to somebody and then maybe stepping back. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they have a big uphill battle because like as somebody who didn't used to worry about any, I didn't used to worry about handrails or lap bars or anything like that. I would touch everything and then I'd go eat lunch and it wasn't the end of the world to me. Now everything I'm going to look at, I'm going to be like, oh man, I'm going to have to go wash my hands. I'm going to have to not touch that. I can't lean up against that. Maybe I won't eat off of a trash can anymore at the Food and Wine Festival. Like, you know, so it's like a bunch of different if I'm the one that was never worried about this stuff, and now I'm worried about it, they're going to have a big uphill battle.
Yeah. So, and then I was going to say one more thing, but I kind of forgot it.
Oh, sorry.
So it's okay. I don't remember. Okay,
That's all
whatever.
right.
Skip me.
Nothing to worry about.
I guess it wasn't important.
Quite all right. And I'm sure it was critical, but
I'm sure it was super important and everybody needed to know,
absolutely.
But they're never going to know now
They'll never know.
Just flew out of my head.
Yeah. No, and if only you had a place to voice your thoughts in the future, if that ever comes back.
There's no such thing.
There's no such thing. Well, Gared, as the Walt Disney World reporter, as the guy who is sort of home based in Orlando, tell me, the Walt Disney World nighttime spectaculars, they pack in a lot of people. Obviously, you think about things like Fantasmic at Hollywood Studios. You think about things like the Happily Ever After fireworks at Magic Kingdom. Everything really surrounding Disney and big spectaculars. I mean, it entices so many people to congregate. Do you think that we're going to see a total cut of entertainment across the board, at least until people get comfortable again?
I've said it many, many times. You've heard it on here. And from a budget standpoint, Disney's going to be cutting a lot from entertainment because that's the department where you can cut stuff and it doesn't really affect the overall. If you cut custodial, things aren't going to get cleaned. I think they're the department that honestly will be there more than anyone. But the nighttime spectaculars, they're either going to cut them completely for a while or have them only on select nights, like Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, some kind of schedule like that, and that will help keep people away. One thing that I'm interested in thinking is if you go on an attraction like Rock and Roller Coaster, they try and everyone push all the way forward as much as you can. I don't think they're going to be saying that as much more just because they don't want people to have that sort of contact. I think they can say whatever they want, but ultimately we as people have our free will to decide if we want to, where they're like, everyone please remain 3 feet apart or 6 feet away from everyone, then you'd be spread out the entire park for fireworks. But I think entertainment wise, that's where the budget cut's going to come from, and that will help keep people from being so close. I think when it comes to certain attractions, maybe they won't load them all the way. I'm thinking of an attraction such as a Flight of Passage, where you have people that are constantly your entire body's on, your chest is on the bar, your lap are in there, your hands are on the handlebar. And the 3D glasses, I know those get cleaned, but I can only imagine what will happen. Maybe they do it every other one or something like that, or maybe they have to scrub it down so the wait times will go longer. I'm not, but entertainment, that's gone for sure. That's gone a lot.
Unfortunately. So I think there's a lot to consider when it comes to how Walt Disney World is going to reopen. And, it just being such a big place and such a sprawling property. Disneyland Resort is much more self-contained. You can really push people all through just one main gate into the resort, and it's much more controllable. Whereas, you go to Walt Disney World and it's 43 square miles of land, and there's all these ways in and out. There's all these resort hotels. There's so much to consider in the reopening of something like that. I know that we have more questions here, one coming from Gabriel Chan. Gabriel Chan asks us, what does it mean to you on a personal level to lose Walt Disney World, even if it's only for a few months? Gabriel asked a question very similar to this about Disneyland here a couple weeks ago. Guys, when it comes down to it, Tyler, Katrina, myself, producer Curt, we're all California-based. Disneyland is obviously something that we spend a lot of time in week to week when it is open. But Disney World is a very different place to us. It's really a vacation destination, whereas for Gared, Walt Disney World is that after-work type place. So, Katrina, what does it mean to you to lose Walt Disney World, even if it's just for a short amount of time?
I'm sad. It's like you lose kind of, not your identity, but you lose part of your happy place, because I always love looking on Instagram and Twitter of people posting their vacation pictures and, living vicariously through them until I'm able to go on my trip, and sadly, our next trip is probably canceled until the end of the year. So for me, it's just kind of like a little dagger to the side, you know, because it's just, it's sad. I love going to, you know, the festivals over at Epcot and like seeing friends that I haven't seen in a long time and, you know, getting a drink and then just chit chatting, eating off the garbage can. I'm going to miss all that stuff.
I feel like we actually have more friends in Florida than we do in California somehow. And or at least friends that we meet up with in Florida.
Yeah.
So it's a real bummer to not be able to see those people either. Not just because of our distance between each other, but also because that it was that great meeting place of, you know, we can all go and have a great time there. And I even got a text from one of our friends earlier today, and I was just like, he bought me one of those up mugs from the tiki mugs from Disneyland Paris, and he's just like, yeah, I don't know when I'm gonna give that to you. And I'm like, don't worry, dude, just hold on to it. We'll see each other someday. And it just makes me sad to think about, you know, like that, not my mug, but just makes me sad to think about that. Won't be able to see him for quite a while, you know. So
yeah, you know, and we always like to make certain that everybody understands that not going to a Disney park is not the end of the world, and there's a lot more important things to be concerned about and worried about right now. We're not taking anything away from that. So when it comes down to it, though, Disney parks have a special place in a lot of people's hearts, including our own, and it was a question that was posed to us. Gared, Disney World being your backyard, does the answer differ for you? How does it affect you on a personal level to not have Disney World?
For me, right now I'm in Nebraska, and it hurts me a lot because when I would get off of work, I would drive through Walt Disney World property to get to my house because my house is literally behind Walt Disney World. And I would drive through and it brought me a sense of peace and happiness and joy because I'm in the most magical place on earth, literally. And so it's very, very sad. I'm not going to cry over it because I understand the reason why it's closed. If it was closed forever, then that's a whole different story. But it's sad because it's like you're cut off from the magic, because the beautiful part about Walt Disney World is when you go there, you escape reality. You become part of that Disney story, whether that's Star Wars, Pixar, or the old school characters. You get to be a part of that. And I feel like a lot of people feel that part of their being is gone because Disney has influenced so many lives in so many ways. For me, luckily, I have this show where I can share my love and my joy and my magic. But for many people, where it's like Disney is their everything, I feel for them a lot because Disney is such an important part. You would never think that some consumer good is important to you. Like you wouldn't, if Target closed, you'd be like, oh my gosh, Target's closed. But Disney is something else because Disney is an emotional connection. And I think that's what people think of more, is that they just don't have this emotional side of them anymore. And it's sad, but I know that when it reopens, people are going to go there to the best of their ability because they want to refuel themselves on that magic. And so it's sad, but you know what? It's not gone. The magic's still there. You can still watch stuff on YouTube. You can still look at pictures. Disney World's never gone.
That's right. We do our best to connect you to more of what makes you happy every single broadcast. And producer Curt, losing Walt Disney World on a personal level, what does that mean to you?
Well, so for me, my wife and I kind of have a joke with that. Anytime we have a bad day, oh, let's just hop on a plane and head over to Disney World. That's just what happens. To know that what we're going through right now, we can't do that. Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, wow. Like, even if we wanted to, it's never going to happen. But even if we wanted to, we couldn't do that right now. And we have plans for going next year. Mm-hmm. And who knows if, what's going to happen then. We wanted to see the Tron ride. Is that even going to be open when we're planning on going? It's just, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of things going on right now. And it seems like Disneyland should be the furthest from my mind, but it really isn't. I want to get back to normalcy, and I want to go back into the park and have a good time again. So
I think a lot of people share that sentiment. And recently here in Southern California, the local Southern California ABC station broadcast the raising of the American flags. So as the flag goes up for the day, the Disneyland security team, who raises it every day, regardless of what's going on, and then they retire the colors every afternoon, they did so. Only the local ABC News affiliate covered it recently, and it meant so much to people. I saw the outpouring of emotion online of an empty Main Street with a castle in the background. I understand that that's Disneyland, but I think that goes to show you to a much greater degree what it means to lose these places that are so instrumental in people's happiness and so are so instrumental in people's optimism. The last time we got asked this question, and it was specifically about Disneyland, it really got me thinking about the psychology of losing places like Disney parks. And when you think about a place like Walt Disney World that has, a spectacular Magic Kingdom, not just a little intimate one like Disneyland, but a Walt Disney World that has so much happiness to offer, right? So many places to go to, so many things to see. To remove Disney parks from the zeitgeist, right? To remove Disney parks from the thing that you get to do or you could potentially experience, something that you could look forward to if you were able to save enough to go and experience. To know that that's been removed as an option, I think psychologically does a lot to people. To know that Disney, which relies so heavily on its theme parks as a company for a financial cushion, to know that that was just gone in an instant and that there was really no other recourse, that those parks have vanished in terms of being able to visit, means that a piece of people who really put a lot of their carefree happiness in a Disney park, in a place like a Walt Disney World trip, that is people's happy places. That is their happy place. That is their home away from home, many of them. And like I said, when we got asked this question originally about Disneyland, Disneyland is home, to me. So to know that a place like Walt Disney World, where, hey, it's a vacation destination that I like to go hang out at, I like to go have fun in, to know that it isn't even an option, like you say, Curt, to know that you can't even do something like that. At a psychological level, it is hard. It is really troubling to know that that happiness has been locked up, that you can't access that now. That, to an entire country that has always relied on it, right? For the last 60 plus years at Disneyland and for the last 50 years for Walt Disney World, it's a beacon, not just for America, but for the world, right? Places like Disney parks mean so much to optimism and happiness, and to know that it's not even available, it's crippling to some people's mental health, right? And I know I don't want to make it sound like, that's over dramatized or just way too dramatic, but it can be crippling when there was no sort of, there was no precursor to this, right? There really was no way to prepare. And suddenly it's just gone. It's a hard thing to let go of. And a place like Walt Disney World that means so much, that is the namesake of the founder of the place that was meant to be the most magical location on the globe, to know that it's gone, even if it is just temporary, makes a huge impact in the mental health and the well-being of so many people, because that outlet that was always there for us suddenly isn't there. It's a hard thing to let go of. We thank you, Gabriel Chan, for your question. And finally, Tiana Carlson, she sends us a question, guys, and she says, will Avengers Campus at the Disneyland Resort save or elevate the Disneyland Resort coming out of COVID-19? So we want to mention that this past week, as a matter of fact, it looks like Avengers Campus has been sort of placed on hold. Okay, so there was originally summer of this year, it being something that was going to debut, and California Adventure was going to celebrate this new land opening on the former site of Bugs Land. But now it looks like this has been pushed out until an undetermined date, as construction had to slow to a stop, given what's going on with the global pandemic. But do you guys think, and we'll start with you, Katrina, that Avengers Campus is going to elevate or potentially save the Disneyland Resort coming out of this pandemic? Because obviously they're going to be worried about crowds. They're going to be worried about people joining the resort into the near future. You think this is going to make a difference?
I don't think it's going to save the park because they're doing, again, they're opening it up in phases. So it's not going to save it, but it'll elevate the experience, because it'll definitely, once they open it, it'll make the park a little bit bigger. So it'll be like less clustered at other places. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know even when they're going to open it too, because again, they have to train their cast members and stuff. So who knows when they're going to open it back up? Maybe during Christmas, I'm hoping, but yeah.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for Disney, they kind of put the big focus on the food and drink, in my opinion. I think that in this first phase of Avengers Campus, really the main thing that we were going to get as far as entertainment goes was the stunt show and the Spider-Man attraction, which I don't have high hopes for personally, but we'll see how it goes. And so they focused on all these things that were going to bring in money for them, like a more kind of California Adventure-esque plan, I guess, where they were going to, sell food and beverage and have these kind of exciting offerings. And I just think that people aren't going to be ready to go and spend $100 on a quick service lunch when this is all over. So I think, unfortunately for them, they have focused on something that will hurt them during this time. But I do think it'll help elevate the park overall. Will it save them? No, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not. This is not a big expansion. Right. And when we get like phase 2, maybe that'll change things. But this expansion is actually relatively small. So I don't think it's going to save anybody, but it'll elevate the park.
I mean, it's nice to have something to sort of have in your back pocket if you're Disney at this point, because naturally, this was drawing to completion here up until just a couple weeks ago when everything had to stop due to the stay-at-home orders. But knowing that now, when they come back, they are going to be able to finish things up, as they were already putting the finishing touches on so much in there. And so now it really is just a wait and see. Hey, are they going to open it and wait until fall? Are they going to wait until Christmas time? Are they going to be able to use this really as a marketing tool to drive crowds in? Gared, what do you think, as an outsider looking in, as a Floridian looking into what we're doing out here in California? I mean, you guys have sort of the same situation with a handful of things out there. Guardians of the Galaxy at Epcot. You've got the Ratatouille attraction along with the France expansion at Epcot. There are a couple of things that Disney in Florida is sort of sitting on as well. Do you think that this is going to be something that elevates California Adventure, maybe saves Disneyland in the long run?
Disneyland will save Disneyland on its own. Just saying Disneyland is open will save it, because people are like, Walt's Magic Kingdom is open again. That will save it itself. I think it will elevate it, like what Tyler and Katrina said. For me, I would be more stoked to go in there and meet the characters, because I read that Iron Man, that the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Avengers Campus are going to be two separate entities, where spoiler alert, in Endgame, Iron Man, he sacrifices himself for the greater good. But on Avengers Campus, you can meet Black Widow, Iron Man, and all the other amazing characters, and it's outside of that. I personally would be rushing in looking for Captain America and Iron Man, waiting for some great speech, and Captain America saying whatever it takes. And you're just like, oh, yes. Or just hearing, I am Iron Man. Like, that would get me going. Like, I forget Spider-Man's ride. I want to go see Captain America and Iron Man getting shawarma. That's what I want. But it won't. If they were to say we are doing everything at once, including the e-ticket attraction, that might save it a little bit more. But it's going to elevate it. It will enhance it. But having World of Color back, having Soarin', and just Disneyland in general, that will save it itself. The name Disneyland itself is a superhero, and it can save itself. But Avengers Campus is just the cape on the end of it that helps make it look a little more flashy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that this land had to be built on top of something that already existed and wasn't in addition to, the rest of the park. It would have been nice to have had a little bit more space, but I understand what they're doing for the sake of making it a land that more people will want to go to. Obviously, Bugs Land was more geared towards the tiny tykes and something for the kiddos to really enjoy. It'll be really interesting to see how long Avengers Campus is sat on during this process, and whether or not, hey, maybe, we don't know what what the economy is going to look like. Tyler, to your point, when it comes down to spending a fortune on lunch or, spending a fortune on these things that we got used to spending a fortune on, will they even be able to do that moving forward? Will that be something that in the post-COVID-19 world, people will even be able to afford if they don't even have enough money to put food on the table? So we'll see what it comes down to, whether or not this moves forward, and whether or not maybe, to your point, Gared, maybe they will wait, until they have any ticket attraction attached to it to open it all up as one big grand spectacular. We'll see. A lot to consider there. Producer Curt, your thoughts? Will this elevate things at California Adventure Disneyland Resort? You think they're going to save it?
I don't think they'll save it, because like Gared was saying, just having the park open as a beacon of hope is I think enough there. Mm-hmm. I just have so much reservations about the Avengers campus, and I want it to be so great, and I just don't know if it's going to live up to those expectations. Yeah. So to bring it out of everything that's going on, I just don't. I'm really worried about that. I think I'm more excited about going on rides that are currently there than this potential new ride or anything like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is a Marvel fan too. I don't know. Like I've seen all of the ones. I just don't know. I just don't know if it's enough.
Like I said, it'll be good to have it at least in Disney's back pocket, so that they can utilize something for the sake of marketing, because I anticipate that a lot of whatever was on the front burner as to be coming to the resort as something that they were probably going to announce in terms of expansions or add-ons, that's probably all tabled. We probably won't be able to see a lot of that into the very near future. It'll probably all get kicked down the road due to budget cuts and restraints. So it's nice to at least have something at the ready. And on top of that, the Magic Happens Parade over at Disneyland, that only had like 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before the park got shut down to really be shown to guests. So that's something that you're welcome to take a look at the nighttime version of the parade over at the Kingdom Report on YouTube. It's something that is definitely a lot of fun, and still was going to be something that going into spring break was going to draw a lot of people in, because it's a new parade. Anytime Disney does a new parade, it's a big fun thing to go see. So they still have that to rely on a little bit, and we'll see when the COVID-19 wraps up and the pandemic sort of gets to a lesser degree and we're able to get back to some sense of normalcy. We'll see what the Avengers Campus does in that mix. More Kingdom Report live for you straight ahead. You stick with us.
Do you know everything the ghost host is going to say before he says it? Are you ready to thank the Venetians each time you board Spaceship Earth? Can you recite Walt's opening day dedication speech? Then join the Kingdom team today, the influential legacy fan community featuring exclusive merchandise that will alert all who've come to this happy place that you are more than just another guest. You are a trusted theme park fan. Don't miss out. Join the Kingdom team right now by visiting the homepage at kingdomreportlive.com. That's kingdomreportlive.com. And now, back to the magic.
Taking a live look outside via the Mattercam in the Disneyland Resort area. You see there kind of a wide shot of Space Mountain to the left. You've got yourself a little bit of Matterhorn action to the right. And who doesn't love a spectacular tree in the middle? My God, there's nothing more beautiful than the Mattercam this time of year, especially as the Disneyland Resort remains closed due to the global pandemic. Well, my friends, that about brings us to the close of our broadcast. I hope you've had a lot of fun. I know I have. Let's do one last check-in with the team and see, make sure everybody has an opportunity to state their piece in quarantine. Tyler, Katrina, anything that we should know going into the new week?
Well, I'm watching the Marvel movies in chronological order. And I have to say, Fury's scars really irritate me because they're all different. That's my piece. I don't know.
I'm still playing Animal Crossing, and kind of I'm a bit of an introvert, so this has not been super difficult on me being at home. I know it's been tough for a lot of other people, and my heart goes out to everyone. We're just kind of keeping our thing going, and we're just doing what we can. That's all you can do.
I'm gonna start talking to myself soon during movies. As a,
It already happens.
it's true. I do talk to myself during the movies.
I'm like, who are you talking to?
I'm
She's like, oh, I have things to say
There's
about
wig
Iron Man.
lacing showing. Oh God. Anyway, now I'm noticing that random things now, and I'm going crazy because of this. I miss people.
Any quarantine tips? Anything you're doing to keep your sanity?
Walking.
Yeah, you gotta keep active. You definitely have to set aside at least 30 minutes a day to go for a walk or do something. Get some elastic bands and lift some weights. And Gared back there flexing and oh boy. Don't encourage him, Curt. What are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Pull away from that, Curt.
I've been enjoying the rain. It's been
kinda nice.
Weird rain going on in LA. So I've been taking my umbrella and my waterproof boots and taking a walk in the rain, which is fun. Splish splash in the puddles.
But just remember to keep yourself active, and people forget too that if you're not staying active, then your mind is gonna start feeling it. Your mind is really helped by that exercise. So keep on doing it.
Yep, got to stay healthy and keep your mind sharp. That's for sure. Gared, any final notes as we send things off?
So this past week I had the opportunity to do a Instagram live, and I had a great time. I had a total of 16 people be a part of it, and I'm going to do that again this week. I believe I'm going to do it on Wednesday, but I will put any announcement on our Instagram page. But one thing to keep me sane is Ariel and I, we have began growing flowers. We found flowers.
Oh my God, it's the Little Mermaid.
There she is.
We found flowers, and these are snapdragons. They're my favorite kind of flowers because they talk to you. Yeah.
What are they saying?
They're saying stay inside, stay safe, and keep working out like Gared.
Are they calling you a weed?
No. No, they're calling me Gaston. But overall, my final message to my friends are: if you're bored, come hang out with me on Instagram Live. Other than that, watch Disney documentaries because that helps you make you feel like you're there in the parks. Like I've been watching The Imagineering Story over again, and I haven't cried yet, but episode 2 is about to happen, so who knows.
Well, that's good advice, yes. And remember, when it comes down to it, we will all get through this together. Stay strong, everybody. There's a lot to consider when it comes to, your own mental health and definitely whether or not your friends and family are well taken care of. So reach out to people, ensure that your loved ones are okay, and take care of you. It's an important time to really be able to focus inward and understand what keeps you healthy, what keeps you happy, especially as we don't have our Disney parks to, aid us in that. So all things to consider as you move about your life week to week, and however much longer our safer at home orders and our quarantine in place demands go on, we will get through this together. Together, we will make sure that life goes on and that our happy places return and that joy is restored. It's all coming back to us. Don't you worry about that. And as a reminder, my friends, when it comes down to it, the legacy of Walt Disney, well, it only carries on because of people like you and me. We hope to see you again next week, Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, for an all-new Kingdom Report Live. See you then.